so much for coming, and I would also like to thank PSAB to give me this opportunity. I've chosen this subject for identification, which would be the waders, keeping in mind the coming winter season, and also AWC, which is going to follow soon, which we do year after year religiously. So I think this particular session is going to help you in the identification of the waders. And also, since we have the winters coming and all the waders are going to flock in, it's also going to be a practicals that you can do with yourself after doing this session. So hence this topic. So not an expert and a mature like most of you, but I'll try to take you through the identification process as much as possible. And this particular subject, I think identification in particular, has very high possibility of getting boring in between or can sound like a classroom session. So I would request your participation in it. At the same time, I'll try to make it as interactive as possible. So once we come to the identification slides, we're going to have pages, we're going to have slides which are going to be interactive and is going to keep your interest on. So these are the various subjects that we think we will tackle today, and some of the people are already making faces out there, but it's alright, I'll still take you through this. And also I think I should give a pre-warning that all the pictures in this particular session have been picked up from net, so photographers here, please do not claim they're your pictures.
Okay.
Alright. So we are going to talk about waders, we are going to talk about migration, what are the migration threats, why right identification of birds is so important. We're going to understand what bird plumage terminology is, and we will try to identify birds not just by their plumages but also by understanding their behavior on field. So this all looks too huge, but I'm sure this is all going to get covered up and rounded up in 45 minutes, 1 hour. So have patience. So basically, why are we emphasizing so much on identification? From that time I have been saying right identification is very important. Why do you think right identification is so important on field? Anyone?
It provides the right scientific data.
Absolutely. So when we go on field, there are a lot of VC seniors coming and telling us that, carry a notebook, prepare a checklist, make a note of your birds. This is not just for your own data, and then we are also encouraged to feed this data in sites like eBird and all that. And then we have reviewers sending us messages saying that, is this the right data? Have you checked properly before feeding it? Why is all this so important? Because all this, sorry sir?
Why not the which species that family that belongs?
Sorry sir, I did not get your question.
There are family name and generic name species.
Yes sir.
That the identification, and I'm telling that this kind of to be find out, and the identification is that which family that belongs to.
Okay.
That's right.
All right.
That
That also. So all this data is used by various scientists, ornithologists, researchers and experts in the field to analyze a lot of things. So for example, you could analyze the movement of these birds, find out the abundance of these birds, the distribution of these birds. So you know which of the birds are residents, which of the birds are wintering. Now for example, X number of say starlings or mynas are seen throughout the year in a particular region. So you can clearly analyze from the data that they are residents. Or you find a bird only once which is recorded. For example, say a red-necked phalarope was seen once or twice. It could be easily considered as a vagrant. So all this data, including their movements, their habitats, when a particular bird is seen in a common region throughout the country, so we can estimate what is the basic habitat of the bird as well. So all this data is very, very important for a lot of research. Now, all the books that you go through, you see a nice distribution map. You see, okay, the bird is a vagrant. The bird is, say a resident. So all of this information comes from where? All that we record in field. That is what people have been recording throughout for so many years has been put together, and that is how your books come, and that is how you get the accurate information. about your, about your birds and all of that. Hence, it is very important that whatever we record is identified properly, because we are the first step to this entire cycle of research and all the data that is accumulated. So it is very, very important that we do our work properly. Hence, identification would be very, very important. And that is why we are doing this session today. Now, understanding about Vedas, what exactly are Vedas? So
Anything that is wading.
yes. So anything. So we would say shorebirds basically as a blanket term can be used. So basically all the birds which are seen around water. So it could be the coastal regions, shores, inland waters, anywhere. So all these birds include your plovers, whether you see your sandpipers, whether you are seeing your oyster catchers, flamingos, egrets, herons, all of these are waders. Now they are basically called waders because they wade through water for feeding, and hence the name waders. As simple as that. Now most of the waders are migratory. So most of these birds are migratory. So what do we understand? If I can give a little basic about migration, I will not go too deep because I will talk something very simple so that everybody is able to catch up with what I am saying. So migration basically for anybody is a seasonal movement. Even humans migrate. If there is some problem, humans migrate, animals migrate, even birds do migration. So basically if there is definition, we would just say it's a seasonal movement of birds from their breeding grounds to the wintering grounds, and from the wintering grounds back to their breeding grounds. This is what we all see, right? This is what is done. So why are these birds migrating? I think this is something that we always talk in our field trips. We talk about why are these birds migrating? What is the necessity of migration? So the first most important thing is food. Second most important thing is escaping from harsh winters. Now for example, most of our migratory birds come from Europe. So when the season is extremely cold there, when the birds are not able to take the cold weather, they fly in. Also because the food availability becomes extremely less, they come back to these wintering grounds, and that is why these wintering grounds are used. Now what is that environmental trigger that actually pushes these birds or gives them the instinct of migration? So it is this environmental trigger is basically the ratio between the daylight and night. So when the daylight starts reducing and the night time is longer, so definitely it's time for winters, and the feeding and the activity time of the birds really reduces. And that is when these birds know that they have to start migrating. But how is it? They just start migrating? Okay, no. So they wait like any other human being, we wait for our transport. When we do all the planning, similarly even birds plan. So when you have tailward wind prevailing, so for people who do not understand tailward wind, it would be winds that flow in the direction of the subject, that is object that is moving, so that it helps them in migration. So basically these birds wait for the tailward winds, and that is when they start flying, so that their migration process is easier. They have to go a long, long way. So that is why these tailward winds are used, and they choose to fly at a slightly higher altitude. What could be the reason? Okay, so the reason would be that it's slightly colder up there. They really get exhausted of flying there. So their flight muscles release a lot of heat, which gets diffused because of this temperature in the altitude, and also in the higher altitude, the tailwind winds prevail, which help them to easily fly and cross their destination. So that is something that I thought I could explain in the most simplest way about migration. So this is something about migration of birds. Now we see that we feel that, we see that wintering birds come. We enjoy all of that sight. All of us go with your binoculars, and some of us also get exclusive species and all of that. But do we understand how much of a difficult journey it is for these birds to actually fly a long, long way and come? Do we understand what are the migration threats that these birds face? So first thing, just covering these kilometers of distance itself is such a big hazard, because these birds get really, really tired on the way, and there is a high possibility of these birds colliding against the human-made structures like the glass buildings, turbines and all of that. So there's a lot of mortality that happens that way. Second, very natural factor, a lot of predators on the way pick up these birds. There are a couple of, there'll be a lot of juveniles who make their journey without any supervision from adults. They get lost and we find vagrants, right? There'll be storms on the way which affect the journey of the birds, and these birds have to stop midway somewhere. So that also causes a lot of mortality. We have human caused problems. There's so much pollution, there are oil spills that are there. So like last time when we had gone for AWC to Krishna Delta, there was a lot of oil spill that was there.
That is true.
So, and we were seeing a lot of turtles died. So definitely all these oil spills and pollution is making the habitat so unsuitable for these birds. There is nothing to eat. Definitely there is food, but it's not really good for feeding, right? We can't eat polluted food. The other day, Shrikant, I and Gautam, we had gone to Osman Sagar. So there, we found a Kentish plover. It was tied in the nets which were thrown by humans, and the net was all around the neck. What could have happened for some more time if it had pulled? It would have slit its throat. But thankfully we went and we got the bird. So there are a lot of things which are done by humans are also causing a lots and lots of problems to these birds who are already facing so much problem, while they're transit. And when they find there is a chance that there could be a flu on the way. If one of the bird gets it, it will be spread across the entire community. So there are a lot of man-made issues, natural issues that these birds face while they're journeying. So why are we discussing this? Because as bird watchers, we really enjoy watching these birds and just think it's a seasonal movement for the birds. But then if we know the struggles that they go through while doing this journey, I think we'll appreciate them a little more and probably will try to not pollute as much as possible, or at least educate people about these birds. It's not such a simple thing. So coming back to waders, see, there is a general physiology a bird has. Okay, a general mindset we have about waders. That is what I was saying. I'm not saying all waders are like this, but most of the waders, like we have certain things which are decided. How did we decide it's a wader? So most of the waders eat insects, they probe in the mud, they have slightly longer bills, they have longer necks, they have longer legs to be stable in the water. From the passing currents do not really, there is slippery mud inside where they stand. So these long legs really help them stabilize. Then we look at the neck muscles which are really strong. Like for example, egrets, your darters, your herons, the way they attack their prey is purely by the power they have in their muscles, neck muscles and all of that. So you have those birds, and then they have like I said, slender bill and all of that. So that's a general physiology of a bird. Now one interesting thing about the birds is their bills, because all of them forage in the mud with their bills. They have sensitive nerve endings in their bill. Now the interesting fact, we see so many waders at one place, but none of them are actually competing with each other for food. There is never scarcity. Why? Because they have different bill sizes, and they in the same habitat, they are never an immediate competition to each other. They are feeding just at very different levels altogether. So they have very sensitive nerve endings at the end of the bills which helps them probe and find food. So I think so many interesting things we have about these birds. Probably none of us know all of that fully, but I thought there are some interesting things that I could share. So now we have flamingo also. So it has a very different bill. It doesn't have a very wader-like bill, like I said, the long bills, but it puts its heads upward, down and feeds. So does many ducks and all of that. So this is how the bills are designed so that they are not direct competition to each other in terms of food in a similar habitat. So, okay. So I've covered all of this before. I didn't want to take all of you slide by slide so that you get.
But
Okay.
one interesting fact I would like to ask you: why do waders eat double their body weight
Because they need to migrate.
before they migrate?
Yeah, because they need that.
On the
amount
way,
of
they don't
energy.
stop for food. They don't. They don't stop for food, or probably they're not sure if they get food on the way.
Correct.
But how do they handle that weight?
See, their metabolism rate is extremely high, because of which they are able to handle all of this.
Yes.
So, thank you for that question. Importance of right identification, checklist we did already. So, this was something we did. Now, we are coming to the actual purpose of this presentation, which is the identification of the birds. And here on we are going to make it interactive. So, because I'm going to ask you, after telling you about two birds, which bird is this?
Yes.
Okay, so how many of us actually know the bird plumage terminology? Do we all ever look at it? Yeah, I'm sure few of us, but I'm also very sure that most of us don't. Tell me, how do you identify a very similar bird? Now, even if I take you through this session, I'm going to say the scapulars of this bird would look like this. Okay, and the supercilium would go like this from the ear corbels, the moustachical stripe. How would you even understand it? So you all are carrying a field book and you're reading it. And then you're going to say, and it's going to say that the tertials of the bird, the tail, the rump and the undertail corbels are so and so. How would you even know? Then how are those books even helping you? Unless you don't go through the first page of your book or the first few pages talk about the terminology. See, they're very simple things. A lot of birds are named after their plumages. Like we have heard of black-loted. Okay, then it's named after the feature, the lore it has. Now, do we know what is a lore? Right? We're talking of supercilium. What is a supercilium? It's like an eyebrow of a bird. We talk of moustachical stripes which flow from the bill. Similarly, I don't think it would be right for me to take you through all of this right now, but I just want to tell you how important this page is for you. Even your books and all of that, it's very important that you go through that page. Try that and then read your book. You will understand it much, much better. That is why I have made this. I have also put this like this so that when it sits, where do the primaries fall, where do the secondaries fall, and when it flies. So I have put in the plumage terminology both sitting and standing. You could refer to this later. Okay, now this is what happens. Yeah. So how do we even identify? So I think we have certain advantages of Veda birding. Yeah. What would be the advantage? The advantage is they give us a lot of time to shoot, to look. The disadvantage would be the distance. Yeah, you need to do that. You need to really look through, and they are small. And another thing is, I don't know, of all the things, the thing is they come to us in the non-breeding plumage. So all of them so all our books show they are red, brick red in color, pink in color whatsoever, and when they come there, they all become grey brown. Yes. And then they all stand so far that it looks like my first slide. So how do we identify that? So this is how you need to filter your confusion. So this is the basic of identification. When you look at the birds, you generally notice what are the various sizes of the birds. Are they long? Are they really not that slimmer build? Is the build stout build? How about their bill? Are they having a straight long bill? Are they having longer legs? So you need to filter down the confusion. You cannot take one vader and then look at all the vaders in the book and think that you will be able to shortlist that bird. No, it wouldn't happen. You need to look, okay, so my bird was possibly this size. How do you conclude a size? Let's take a common bird in mind. Let's say we take a common sandpiper in our heads. We all know how much. So we know that that's a 20 centimeter bird, right? Around 20 centimeter. So once we look at a bird, so we can, if we keep a benchmark, we know that it could be 24, 25, or it could be 18, 15, 13, right? So you keep a few benchmarks like a stint size, a sandpiper size, one more size. Basis that, filter, my bird could be a sandpiper size. Now, in the sandpipers, I realized that the bill was slightly curved. So let us look for sandpipers with curved bill. Okay, the legs were yellow. Okay, some of these birds, the legs are black. This one is yellow. So you could keep filtering down until you find your bird. It would be much, much easier and a lot more fun than just posting in a particular group and asking what that bird is. Because that's a different joy altogether. Yeah, so I think that will make you more interested next time. So after this whole session of identification, when you go back to the field, you should practice. That should be your practicals, that was I able to do it. So this is what happens. So let's begin. So we'll start with the easiest. So we talk of stints, little stint, stemming stint. So these are the two birds that you find on field. I have basically chosen Hyderabad and I have taken only non-breeding plumage because I do not want to confuse everybody. This is the plumage that you see these birds in here, right? So what do you think? these stints, I have put in every picture the size. Okay, they are about 13 to 15 centimeter, which is like your sparrow size. That is the size of the bird. So these are the smallest birds which keep slowly going around the side of the water body that you see, feeding on and probing on the mud on the side and pulling out insects. Now what is the difference between these two birds? This is a little stint and this is a Temminck stint. You see, this bird has yellow legs. A Temminck stint has yellow legs, whereas a little stint has black legs. So it becomes very simple. If you are able to look at, so you know when you look at a stint, what do you need to find? At least you should have an idea what do you have to look for. So look for the legs. So if you have yellow legs, so then it would be a Temminck stint, or otherwise it would be a little stint. Also, you could notice, so this is the basic pointer. Every slide I am going to tell you a basic pointer, and then I am going to tell you a point which you will be like, okay, I am going to look at this in the field and all of that. So a Temminck stint, for example, is very overall plain brown on top, if you see grey brown type. But this bird is not so plain, it is streaked and more mottled appearance on top, right? This has some supercilium, distinct supercilium which you can see going. Supercilium is again this part of the bird. That is why I have made sure that I put arrows so that you can make out what I am talking about. This does not have that kind of distinct supercilium. Also, this bird in the posture will look slightly elongated because it has shorter legs and it has a longer tail which appears beyond the wingtips. So this is how you identify a Temminck stint from a little stint. So this bird would look pretty elongated, more more common collar and all of that, more brownish puff on the breast, whereas that's more white and all of that. Now what would happen? So now most of the times what happens, it's very nice to look at them here, but when you actually go on field, the bird begins to fly. So sometimes we get a flying shot, sometimes we get a sitting shot, sometimes we get a very weird shot also. So it is, do not think that this shot is not of importance. Keep all your shots together, because when you have very confusing birds, I am taking care of only 22 birds here which you can confuse with, like two stints which you could see in Hyderabad. So when you see a stint, you know it's either a little or a Temminck. How do you find out? Look at the legs, yellow legs, Temminck stint. Okay, black legs, it's a little stint. So that is what you do. And if all these things you cannot remember right now, but these things I could share with you later so that you could just go through it. So try this out on field. Next time you see that small bird going around the sides of the tank or whatsoever inland water body, please take your binoculars, try to find out, take a photo, see. It will also be fun trying to take a flight shot, because then you can see how these birds are different. Sometimes you only get a flight shot, sometimes you only get a sitting shot. So I'll just show you. Okay, so here you can see the sizes of the bird. So you see a Temminck stint here. You see a little stint here. Why? Because this has yellow legs. And the same page I am showing you the bird, the sizes are same. Both the birds look the same size. Very small waders walking around, stints. So you can have a look at this. This is a size perspective of the bird. They both are similar size. Now when in flight, it's not really great help when in flight, but we can have a look. Did I say that a Temminck stint has a longer tail which gives it an elongated look? Right? So since the tail is longer, you see the feet are not really projecting beyond the tail. Whereas a little stint, you can see that slight toe. It's not really necessary for you to know this, but I think slowly as time goes, because you will be learning everything, you can learn more. I can share the presentation, you can go ahead with more. Okay, also another interesting thing is, do you see this part, the sides of the tail? See, both of them have this center, partition to the tail which is black. So the sides of the tail are grey on a little stint. Whereas if you see a Temminck stint, it has white edges. That has grey. That is it. So now I think it's easier. So when you get a bird in flight, you know it's a Temminck. It's a stint. So you know whether it's a, so you have to find out whether it's a little stint or a Temminck stint. So let's do some activity now. So one person at a time, anybody who can tell me what this stint is.
Temminck stint.
Okay, anybody else? Why a Temminck stint?
Legs are yellow.
Wonderful. Alright, and do you see that overall browner color, no distinct supercilium and all of that? a long tail over a long body. So that's a good thing. That things for and cleanliness. I told you this is going to become like a classroom after some time, but enjoy it. This is the only way I can take you through this set.
Long tail electric.
So what is the another next word? 1 second. Okay. So the next word that we are going to try to identify. I have only chosen words we get confused about and always ask. Okay, wood sandpiper or a green sandpiper. Okay. Usually you can find out which is a common sandpiper, but when it comes to a green sandpiper and a wood sandpiper, there is a confusion. So I have put them side by side so that you get an idea. So generally if you get only this picture, you would feel this is the same as this because both of them are spotted, both of them have necks, have legs, yellow legs and all of that. So a lot of times people post picture asking whether it's a wood sandpiper or a green sandpiper. So let us understand. By looking at this bird, what do you feel? This is a green sandpiper. This is much larger in size if you see. Then a wood sandpiper. A wood sandpiper is a very slender looking bird. Nice slender neck, long legs. So looks beautiful. Whereas this looks slightly stout. The neck doesn't look all that big. And the legs are also a little greenish in color, greenish shade. Now if you see very clearly, can you see any supercilium for this bird? Which is the eyebrow, let me make it easier. So supercilium, you don't see. Whereas for a wood sandpiper, you see a very nice, neat supercilium. So that is one very important feature for you to note, which will easily help you in identifying whether sandpiper is a wood or a green sandpiper. A wood sandpiper has a nice supercilium, whereas a green sandpiper, the supercilium basically will be restricted to the eye. That is all. So this is very simple description of this bird. Now I will show, and this also has a complete dirty looking breastband also. And also if you note, the spotting in a wood sandpiper is very clear, right? And you also see the dots connected and all of that. Whereas for a green sandpiper, you see that very fine dots which do not even connect, right? When in flight, you will also be able to note that a green sandpiper has very broad bands in the tail, whereas a wood sandpiper doesn't. So I'll show you a flight picture. Okay, first you can have a look at these birds, same birds. Look at this, a wood sandpiper, right? Look at the supercilium. Look at that bird. Look at the spottings here, look at the spottings here. Look at the size of the bird. This is in flight. Because sometimes it's just a flight. Sometimes it's not so easy, no? Like you put it on a paper and I say, okay, this supercilium, no supercilium. It's not all that easy. So when you will be taking your own pictures, so you will have to take all angles to identify your bird, right? If there is a confusion at all. So when it flies, do you see it has a finer tail bands, wood sandpiper? It will have broader tail bands, just as the edges here. Now, when in flight, you will note that the underwings and the underwing coverts and the entire underwings is dark, contrasting the whiter underbelly. This, it doesn't contrast. So very simple, na? Ek shot liya, ud raha hai, you know the wings are dark. This is because most of these birds are at a distance. So you've just taken a shot and you know, fine, this is a green sandpiper. I see the tail bands, I see that this is this way, that way, so you know, right? So you can see. So I think this is very simple. You have broad tail bands, you can just look at those underwings, they are darker than the rest of the body. That will be the easiest point.
So this is the one which is Vijay Mallya took the one, the logo for his organization.
That is kingfisher.
That's a kingfisher.
Today we are not doing the kingfisher. Okay.
Yes, I will take this.
So activity time.
Green sandpiper.
Okay, that's what you think. What does anybody else think?
Sandpiper.
Anybody thinks, yeah, I have spoken for so long, somebody should be thinking something about it.
Sandpiper.
Which sandpiper?
Green
Sandpiper is
sandpiper.
You also feel green? Satvik, you feel green?
Brown sandpiper.
No, that's green. Tell me seriously.
I
You think it's a green sandpiper? Why do you feel it's a green sandpiper?
The dots are white.
Even a wood sandpiper has white dots.
But they're wide apart, they're not connected.
Okay.
That's a wonderful observation that you have made. What else?
The legs are plain.
Wonderful, sir. The supercilium is not extending from that.
Legs.
We have all the points. So we know that it's easy to identify the bird provided we know the points. We should know now what is underwing orbits, what is the underwing at first place, what is the leading edge. You're understanding the point I'm trying to make is you need to know the bird terminology to understand the bird. This is another bird of interest to a lot of us. Nowadays it is visiting our land. So
Most
curlews,
controversial bird.
sandpipers and the dunlin, I think it becomes very difficult. Right now even for me it is very easy to say, here, okay, two birds are side by side, this is dunlin, this is curlew sandpipers. But when you shoot a single bird, it becomes extremely difficult. I'll tell you that also what to do with it. So, a curlew sandpiper, basically, since the name suggests curlew, it has a nice long curved bill. This isn't all that curved, but still, when you see it alone, without the curlew sandpiper, you still feel it is curved. Right? So this is what it is. It does not have a distinct supercilium. A curlew sandpiper has a very beautiful, clean supercilium, has a nice long neck. But here in this picture, because it's the posture, we are not able to see the neck. They have nice long, they look more elongated. I've written this. Longer neck gives it more elegant and slimmer appearance than a dunlin. And if you see, you can see some nicely marked arrow shaft there in the plumage, the upper parts. Here, this looks like the Temminck stint. Even this is, very plain on top. So, and you don't see the distinct supercilium, and it has a shorter bill which is not really down curved but looks down curved when you don't see it with this, and broad based. So this is what it is. It has shorter neck giving it a stouter appearance. Alright? Now, most of the times, just the other day when we went on field, we were not able to identify whether it's a dunlin or a curlew sandpiper. Why? Because it's first thing not very common bird to our place. Secondly, it has come. Now we need to know that we have previous records of dunlin. Majorly it's the dunlin and not the curlew. So is it very easy for us to just consider it's a dunlin or a curlew? Because I told you identification is very, very important. Because what we enter matters. So hence, what did we do? We took a flight shot. Look at these birds together. I've taken them in one frame for perspective. This looks much smaller, looks bigger, right? Also, you will note that a curlew sandpiper can be seen. This is an observation fact that you usually see them slightly inside the water. Whereas dunlins will be in more shallow water because they have shorter legs. And because curlew sandpiper has longer legs, they enjoy that water which is slightly deep. Okay, so this is what we did. We just clicked the bird. So we went the second day, right? The first day we did not have a flight shot. We went the second day and we were like, okay, we'll wait for the bird to fly. Because it is very, very simple. The curlew sandpiper has a white round. Whereas a dunlin has a partition. So that makes it so easy. Then it's really confusing. But for that you should know. If you know, you will take the other shot. Now, if you don't know, you will just keep that photo and you will sit with it. So if you know that you take a flight shot and it will be so easy. If you know the feature, it will be really easy for you. Okay. Now I don't want this side to speak at all. This is bad. I am not having any participation from this side. So let us, only if they fail I come here. What is this bird? Yeah, I have spoken for so long, you should be able to identify this bird.
We need to see a flight shot.
Not bad, not bad. Actually, it's good. I like the attitude. It's coming. It's not easy to just say, oh, what is this looking at us. What could this be? A wild guess? Some features that you could make out. Okay, wonderful. Why do you feel it's a dunlin? That's a nice observation.
Little stout.
Yes. The bill is not all that curved. It's very broad based. It's overall brownish in color, whereas a curlew sandpiper is greyish, more grey side. Smile. Pay more attention. So this is what it is. I hope it's not getting very boring.
No, not at all.
Not at all? Great. Because I will finish this misery.
Once again, somebody said long legs.
Sorry. Okay, so the curlew sandpiper has longer legs than a dunlin. Dunlin has shorter legs, which makes it a little stout.
Okay, any idea about the legs color? Both of them have almost
More blackish base. I'll tell you what happens in water is, it's very nice to read in books. that okay, this has, you know, that slaty green leg, this has a black leg, but when it actually gets on water and all, it becomes very difficult. So I'm trying to take you through the more certain points of identification, which will be easier for you on field. I have mentioned the legs in each slide, which you can go through later, but that might not be of real help on field. That is why I said please do go back on field and try this out yourself. Some birds that we get for identification would be something like marsh sandpiper or a common green shank. Right? So, very simple. Okay, first I'll tell you the easiest point. The marsh sandpiper does not have any lore. So lore is this part that joins your bill and the eye. Whereas a green shank has a lore, visible lore. If you see that, you will be easily able to confirm it's a green shank. So this is a green shank. This has a very plain face. Because it doesn't have a lore, it looks like having a very plain face, the marsh sandpiper. Whereas this one does not. Now, why I am telling you, though a green shank has a slightly upcurved bill, right? This has a straight bill. Still I told you look at the lore. I could have told you about the bill, na? But what happens is when it is slightly far, that is where it becomes a little confusing whether it's a green shank or a marsh sandpiper. So you could very well notice the lore of the bird, and then you'll start seeing the other features slowly that okay, it has a slightly upturned bill and all of that. So this is something that you could notice. Heavier, slightly broader bill, it's not as thin as the marsh sandpipers. Heavier, slightly upturned bill. Again, this is a bigger bird.
Size will play an important.
Yeah, this is much bigger. If you see, that is why I have every slide which shows you the size. Look at it. This looks like a very small thing in front of this. If you see here, you see the plain face. That's a marsh sandpiper. That's why in every slide I have also put the size, so that you don't have to keep referring back. See, look at the plain face, no lore or marsh sandpipers, slender, long bill. This heavier, upcurved bill with a nice
Visible lore.
visible lore, and a much larger bird. In flight again, it's very interesting. It is like the green sandpiper has the darker underwings, right? A green shank has darker underwings. There is not a marsh sandpiper. So I don't think you really will have to go to the flight of this bird because you can ID. Here, it is.
Marsh sandpiper.
वो होता है ना, in every class you have that particular set who talks first. Right. So this is a marsh sandpiper. Please give me the pointers quickly. Wonderful. But it doesn't, I told you, first thing please observe, it doesn't have an upturned bill face. It is a plain face, no lore face. It's nice and bill. It's a marsh sandpiper. So next time you will not have the doubt if you note the bill and the lore. And this is another bird you will have a problem with. A common, so you don't have to first remember whatever I said, keep forgetting it, because so that you can only get this in your head, otherwise you'll have all the features of every bird put together in your head right now. So just read this like this, and whenever you flee around field, then you'll get it better. So a common red shank and a non-braided spotted red shank. Even I used to have a problem identifying this bird before, but there are, see, I'm being nice. So we used to have a lot of problem identifying these birds. If you see again a common red shank, again, like because they are in comparison, it looks very nice. This bird has a smaller bill, lengthwise, when compared to this bird. This bird is also slightly bigger in size, more slender looking than, I would say it's more slender. You will see that it's more graceful, more slimmer and taller in appearance. Also the bill is slightly longer, but when you have only one bird, how do you identify if the bill is longer than the other one? So it has a slightly longer and the bill is down curved at the tip. So you could have a note at that, and you will see that it has a red base to the lower bill, right? Whereas a common red shank will have almost that half of that bill up and down orange red. It's not even down curved at the tip, right? And the legs are also orange red. It has red red base to the bill and it has red. Majorly you will see the bill looks dark only some tip of the bill, base of the bill would look red for direction. Longer legs, definitely since it's more, more slimmer, more beautiful looking, it is grayer. If you're noticing that is happening from quite some time, that all those birds which are more beautiful, they are more designed, more grey in color, and the other ones with shorter legs which are stout are more uniform on top.
Yeah.
Look at this, two birds at the same place. Spotted red shank. See, look at this more black looking bill. The slightly longer. Looks big. This is more uniform on top, not all that shorter bill. So we will do this. Wait, okay. So this is also something we did at Ansagar the other day. So this bird was slightly far. How do you compare the bill? How do you look at the bill? And secondly, when we tried to approach closer to get a picture, the bird flew away. So we said, okay, let's take a flight shot because this bird clearly has trailing. These are called trailing edges. The front part is called the leading edge. So these have white trailing edges.
Common
Common
red
red
shank.
shank. Whereas this doesn't have any trailing edge. So when we took the picture, so we were like, it's a spotted red shank. I'm sure it's a spotted, but let's take a picture. When we took the picture, we realized that it was a common red shank. Because it has those trailing edges. So try all this, it will be very, very interesting.
But every time you get two birds to see here.
That's why I'm telling you
No.
features. That is why I'm telling you features. इसीलिए तो सर मैं आपको बोल रही हूँ, I'm telling you features which you can see an independent bird. अगर trailing edge है तो फिर अपना common red shank है ना. So ये क्या है?
Spotted red shank.
So I'm taking a good class. Okay. So
Black-tailed godwit.
Srinivas should be able to tell.
Barred.
Black-tailed and
what
barred.
makes you feel this is a spotted red shank?
Yeah. Spotted it.
Spotted.
Spotted.
Why?
The base of the lower mandible is red.
Okay.
Small,
Do you see that
downward,
slightly dumped up in front?
small downward curved bill. Detail.
Longer.
See the curve at the tip of the bill.
It is slender.
Spotted red shank is actually one of the few birds that you can see here just as it's coming into breeding plumage.
Breeding plumage.
And then you will never recognize it as the same bird. I can tell you.
I know, that beautiful bird. And I am not doing the breeding here, I am not doing the juveniles, I am just doing the non-breeding plumage because it's still like the first this thing. Black-tailed godwit, bar-tailed godwit. We do not get the bar-tailed godwit here, we get the bar-tailed godwit in the coastal areas, but still some people ask for this. If you see, generally what do you see? That's a black-tailed godwit, that's a bar-tailed godwit. So you see, this bird is very tall if you see, right? It's very long, it has longer legs, a longer neck also. In this picture you cannot see that long neck, but it has a very long neck and it is very uniform on top. Whereas look at this bird, it looks so mottled, so designed, so, so much patterning on top. A bar-tailed godwit has all the patterning. Whereas a black-tailed godwit, since it's common, let's say it looks very, very common, it looks very uniform on top. Okay, definitely it will have a black tail which is not seen in the picture. It has bars on the tail, hence the name bar-tailed godwit, which is not seen in the picture. So you can look clearly for these two have very, very long bills, and if it's a bar-tailed godwit, you can see that the bill, you have the tip of the bill, most of the front tip covered in black, whereas this has half the bill, red and black kind of thing. So not going by all this, I think we can very clearly go by their supercilium because they are more patterned and all, they have more patterned face as well, which has a good supercilium.
Distinct
Red
supercilium.
doesn't have a distinct supercilium, it has indistinct supercilium and is more uniform. Long, definitely longer than this.
There is another feature of the bar-tailed, the black-tailed. You see it in a lot deeper water than
Yeah, because of the longer neck. The similar feature that we did about the curlew sandpiper and the dunlin, wherein the curlew sandpiper is seen slightly more deeper water than the dunlin because of the longer legs. So those features now, as you keep identifying the birds, you'll keep adding by yourself and understanding and observing. Look at this. Actually, now how does it look together? Actually, the bar-tailed godwit is looking on the ground, literally. Whereas the size is 36 to 44, 37 to 41. It's similar. But why? Because you are actually the size of the bird is from the tip of the bill to the tail, not upwards.
Yeah.
That's why the sizes are similar. So you see how uniform it looks, how slender neck and all of that. This is like all streaked and all of that.
Here you
Right?
can see the bar tail and the.
Yes, that actually
Tail.
flight. So we
No, I
also-
mean even while standing, probably
Yes.
that could be a good feature.
Look at this. Oh, yeah, you can see the bars in the tail.
Yes.
So when it flies, you look at this bars on the tail and the black.
See the difference?
So other features are for people to read because I'm trying to.
Here there is no bar. It's
So
completely
the
black.
most obvious. Here, this side please. What is this?
Party.
इसने बोला? Oh, very good. So what makes you feel it's a bar tail?
वो गूगल ने बताया.
What can you see? Don't tell me it's your picture.
It is a bar on the table.
Oh, wonderful. But anything else that you see, it's okay, you can participate. You'll become a bird. You'll make your bird.
Other than
Let it be. It's, you tell me. The kids will do better. Why do you feel it's a bar tail bird?
What else can you see?
Because it has a grey pattern.
I think she's one of the students who stand outside the
Ah,
class.
yeah, supercilium
Very distinct.
Yeah.
is very distinct and the bill is long.
Yeah, also, I forgot to mention a very important point. The bar-tailed godwit has a slightly upturned
Near
bill.
the eyes.
Correct.
This has a slightly upturned bill, whereas a black-tailed godwit has a straight bill. So this is a bar-tailed godwit because of all that paddling on top, shorter legs, distant supercilium is slightly upward. Yeah, I'm getting closer to finishing this. I can see restlessness. I can feel it now.
No, not at all.
So again, another thing, Eurasian curlew and a whimbrel, these are coastal birds that you will see by the coast. You can find them closest. You can find them in Krishna Delta and all of that. This is also very simple to identify. This is a larger bird, curlew, Eurasian curlew, whereas a whimbrel is a smaller bird. See, when we just take pictures and send for identification, this is what happens. They both look similar size. In fact, this looks larger. So that is why it is very important we mention what is the size of it. So that plays a very important factor. Now this, if you see, it is a very plain-faced bird, a curlew. Okay, even very neatly patterned. Very plain-faced, longer bill, that's why I call the curlew. It's like the curlew Dundan kind of figure. So long bill, this has a shorter bill, more blackish. This and this has like more pink. If you see the crown, it has a very distinct, I don't know if these things are being seen. It has crown stripes. A whimbrel has crown stripes. Since this is plain faced, it doesn't have that kind of pattern. You have an eye stripe, a beautiful eye stripe going for a whimbrel. And the crown. So that makes it a very beautiful pattern for the bird. Two crowns, eye stripe, small bill. And if you see, it is also heavily patterned on top when compared to that bird. It is more neatly patterned. I will say this is more clumsy looking on top.
And that's distinct super.
Yeah.
So this is how you can identify this bird.
Yes.
We will just see the size, you will get to know. This is a curlew with a much longer bill. This is a this is a whimbrel with a shorter bill. And so the size comparison is there for you to see. That's simple. Just identify this bird.
Wimbler.
Okay, why do you feel it's a whimbrel?
Then, you know,
The mother can also answer this. Okay, why do you feel it's a whimbrel?
Because it has short bill.
Okay.
how can you compare it?
There is no other bird to see, na? Is there anything else that you can see?
No crown.
No crown, okay. So, but a whimbrel has a crown, na? You're calling it a whimbrel and you're saying it has no crown.
You know the
I
point.
see a crown here. It has the crown stripe. That is why, see, now the picture I showed you last time was a front face. You can get picture in any shape. It wouldn't be like the picture I'm showing you right now. So it does have crown stripe. You can notice that it also has a very nice eye stripe. Right?
Supercilium.
So this has a very patterned face, a smaller bill, very tightly packed design on top. It's a whimbrel. Okay? So it has a more patterned face. I promise there should be 3 more.
No problem.
3 more.
But I thought I will cover all the confusing ones. so that
Yes,
it's very easy for you all to go out and field to do something. And identify your own birds. Identifying a non-breeding Pacific golden plover from a non-breeding grey plover. So Pacific golden plovers, I think we are also seeing here locally in inland waters and all of that. This all comes from observation. Because the more you bird, you know that, okay, I'm not able to find a grey plover in the inland water. Where am I seeing it? I'm seeing it in the coastal area. So, they both are plovers. So, definite body structure of a plover. Now, what do you see? Because this is golden, it looks a lot more golden. It has a lot of tinges of gold on top. Buff gold on top. This is a grey plover. It doesn't have any tinge of gold at all. That has a bulb-like head. In proportion to its body, it has a small head, if you see, that's standing out. So hence a slimmer looking, tall bird, we say. This has a big head in proportion to its body, and it is a grey-white bird. It doesn't have any colors, buff on the breast, on the face, and all of that. That is more golden and buff colored on the breast. This is a very simple bird that you can ID. Looks stockier, larger. Look at the comparison, because that bird is 27 by 30 even on sighted persons. Also, it has broad tail bands, the grey plover. This is the flight. If you see broad tail bands of a grey plover, this doesn't have those broad tail bands. And it has, the grey plover, you can see it has black armpits. That is missing in the
Pacific golden.
Pacific golden plover. So very easy. Take a shot, you know, sitting or standing. So photography is also equally important for us birders. Giving importance to it.
Golden
Identify-
plover.
Right.
Pacific gold.
Okay, so you don't have to be that quick for identification. You should wait for the slide to come. Observe your bird carefully. There is no hurry. Okay, I told you last time, Majani, to observe your bird. What is it?
No, what all do you see?
Do you still feel it's a Pacific golden plover after seeing it again?
Confusing.
So what?
No,
That
she's
is the thing.
threatening
No,
her.
if I'm a birder, I will ask you when you know it's. No, what do you think? It's a grey plover or a Pacific golden plover?
Gold.
Okay, why do you think it's a golden?
Because it is shorter and
Golden.
yeah, it has golden.
So let's take that as the base of identification. It has all the golden and buff colors on top by which it gets its name. Whereas a grey plover is purely grey in color. Okay?
What is buff? Buff means
Buff is like, it's a
Fawn
color.
color.
Fawn color.
Fawn.
Something slightly fawn, lighter than fawn.
Yeah, it's a okay,
Yeah.
golden buff.
Kentish.
Now these are very simple ones.
Okay.
Now I'm feeling
Little
very,
lighter
very
than
bad. How did I
This
even
year.
make this? You should be appreciating that. Okay. This is something very common. Now we are getting the lesser sand plovers in our territory as well. They are not just the coastal birds. We have also seen them in inland waters in Osman Sagar and all of that. These two birds look very similar. Very, very similar. There is only one way to identify. Yeah, size. A Kentish plover has a collar.
You can see.
Lesser sand plover does not have a collar. Many a times in hurry, when I look, I feel that okay, they're all Kentish plovers, but sometimes it turns out later after exam. You know, when you look at your pictures, that it was actually a lesser sand plover, or sometimes you see both of them, and you're not able to make out. So very simple, right? Kentish has a nice collar at the back, and the lesser sand plover doesn't.
There's another difference.
Like,
The eyes are much bigger in a lizard.
Yes, the size is also bigger.
No, size के नहीं, I'm talking about
the eye itself
the eye
is
size
bigger.
itself in comparison to the size of the head. The eye covers a greater proportion of the head in a lesser sand plover than it does in the Kentish.
Okay. Yeah, I think it looks like. Can I answer, sir? Also, size-wise, Kentish is a much smaller bird. It would look like slightly larger than your or stems which are 15 centimeters. Lesser sand plover is slightly larger, but still even when they're standing side by side sometimes because of the little distance they feel like the same.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is this?
Kentish.
Kentish. Why do you think it's a Kentish?
Because it has a white color.
It's that simple to identify. Right? Okay, I'm telling you this is the second last identification.
No, we are not asking you to stop. We're clapping for her.
I know, but I'm telling you, this is the second last identification slide because this will cover your 20 birds and then your 21, 22 doves. Span is like, why did I come here?
Yeah.
You're doing well. Right?
Greater sand
You live.
plover, lesser sand.
This is interesting. This is interesting. On field, to find a greater sand plover and a lesser sand plover, basically you cannot distinguish them unless they are side by side and you look at it and say a greater sand plover looks larger. Okay? It does have yellow legs and this one has black legs, a lesser sand plover, but still you cannot make it out because again, like I said, in the mud and all of that, it doesn't really appear yellow. Sometimes it can also have a greenish tinge and this can also have a greenish tinge. So what do you do? Now the only way, it's very rare that you'll get them together in a frame, but what if you, it's okay to compare like this, but what if you get this bird independently? Because when they're together, you can make it out by a size. But here, now it says, basically all the books say that the bill of this bird is much larger, the greater sand plover, because it's greater, it has a greater bill. It has a smaller bill. The size of the bill, which means the beak of the bird, is actually either longer or equal to the distance between
The eye and
the rear of the eye to where the bill starts. That's why I marked this in red. So this distance is either equal or larger. The bill is either larger. Here, this is lesser than this distance. Okay. Now, okay. I think that's like crazy. We cannot really sit and measure it. So we look at the other way of doing it. So this is simple. A greater sand plover. This is the common bulge of a bird. The upper
Yes.
mandibles bulge, which you see. This will be half when it comes to a greater sand plover. Easy? If you get a close-up picture, you'll be able to make out. See, as for a lesser sand plover, it's only that 1/3 that you get that bulge. The last 1/3. So it becomes very simple if we really know these points for identification. That is literally half, and that is like the last 1/3. Smaller blunt tip, this is a big blunt tip, almost half you have the common bulge. So that is how you identify this bird. And I think I tried this and it worked out. So this was in one page, you can see clearly. This is like half the size.
See, more than that, the bulge is more prominent in the greater and less
Yeah,
prominent in
and
the
also the half is
lesser.
only towards the last edge of the tip.
Exactly.
So it's easier. So we can look at these smaller things and identify these birds. See now here both the legs also are looking almost black types. I think we can skip the next slide so that we do the last slide of identification. Okay, wait. What is this bird? You feel it's greater? You also feel Sattva, where do you feel
Even I
it's greater?
feel.
You also feel it's greater. Okay.
Lesser.
The bulge.
Yeah, there's a bulge.
Yeah, you see the bulge is almost half, and also if you see the legs are yellow but they are almost covered. Even when you photograph the angle of light whatsoever you record it, can show it otherwise.
Light plays an important role in these
So
colors.
this is the last identification slide. So feel happy, and I think it is also of a lot of interest to people. A common snipe and a pin-tailed snipe. How do you ID these birds? Yes, the book says that a pin-tailed snipe has a lesser bill than a common snipe. Right? But again, unless they are together, how do you know? So, for a common snipe, first of all, let's look at this bulge, the supercilium bulge. This is much bigger in a pin-tailed snipe. Why does this supercilium looks bulged? Because the spine is very thin. The lower is very thin, because of which the supercilium looks bulged. Here, if you see, the lower is not thick, so the supercilium looks uniformly divided. So this is the first pointer. But snipes usually do not sit in this position for us to give this angle. So there are a lot of other things that you do. This has a shorter bill, I said. That this has a rufous supercilium contrasting with a white cheek. This has majority more or less the same. it looks buff, more plain faced. It is more barred bird, a printed stripe. If you see on the medians it is barred, on the back it is barred and spotted. If you see, a lot of bars you see. But if you see, this is more streaked and spotted. This is streaked and spotted. This is more barred bird. So it can help you. This, the tail rarely extends beyond the wingtips. That one, the tail extends clearly beyond the wingtips. Okay? But it is very, very easy to find this bird if you can get one flight shot. You don't have to look at all of this at all. I'll come to this just for the flight. Okay, wait, I'll come to the flight shot. Okay, look at this. So this is something that you could know. This is a common snipe tail. This is a pintail snipe tail. Do you see? You have only one feather each on the outermost, which is plain. One feather each. Whereas in pintail, you have 8 plain feathers each on each side of the tail.
More than
Hence,
one.
pin-like feathers. Hence, the pintail snipe is the name that it comes from here. So, usually, what is the advantage of this, pins? So, these snipes usually do displays for mating and all of that. And these pins are used for creating the noise, which is called a drumming. So, that is why a pintail snipes have so many, and again I'm telling you, it's not easy to get this or in flight, whether it has 8 pins. You also have spino snipe, this snipe, that snipe, you'll have 6 pins, 4 pins, 3 pins. So to even get, thankfully here we get mostly the common snipe and the pintail snipe, hence I've only covered this. So the easiest way to identify this bird is common snipe has lot of
Underbelly,
white stripes underwing, whereas this is fully dark. This is fully dark. The underwing is densely marked. So you cannot find the white caps, whereas you can find the white caps in a common snipe system. This is the easiest way to ID this bird. And also if you note that common snipe, since it has a lot of white bars, this will be a good way to remember because underwings are white barred. It also has a white trailing edge, which this bird does not have, no white trailing edge. This has white under and above, this doesn't. So there was some bird which was posted in identification in the Ask ID of Indian Birds. So this was the bird. It was very, very far away ID this snipe. So I think this was the only point I used for identification, that it had all white under the wings. And I'm just telling what points you could use. So that is it. I think it's easy. You have understood some features. Go on. So what could be the snipe? This is the last question of the day.
Pintail snipe.
Wow. And the snipe ने इसलिए ID किया. Why do you feel that?
Because the supercilium is very bulged.
Yeah, because this is very thin, because of which the supercilium looks very bulged. What else? It looks
Heavily straight.
barred.
Barred.
This barred, more barred, and it has a shorter. I think wonderful. Thank you. That is about it. Everybody's like, it's over. Sure. Okay, so it depends. So there are certain birds, but most